Hey everybody, we are back with BvG episode 3. Oh, that rhymed.
Sweet rhymes.
That's how we start things off. I'm giddy about today's episode. So Scott and I were going over our list of what potential matchups we can go over. We got some good ones in the future, but I was thinking I want to go over something that's just absolute balls to the wall crazy. And Scott and I got into our Discord call and we're like, what about Gaston from Disney versus Shrek? What about Gaston from Disney versus Clayton? What about Gaston versus everything?
Oh, yes. Gaston versus the world, everyone.
That's the title of this episode. We've got at least 15 matchups that we randomly came up with while brainstorming, and it's going to be... This is our new thing, Gaston versus the world. And you better expect to see another one of these in the future, because we're going to call this one Gaston versus the world, round 1.
Absolutely.
Scott, who's Gaston?
Gaston, as some listeners may recall, he is the massive oaf that was first introduced to us from the early 90s version of Disney's Beauty and the Beast. He is the infamous antagonist and the love-struck moron for Belle, our super beauty. And and he's such an incredible character. There's been memes a million about Gaston, just unbelievably good ones.
Gaston, like you said, a love-struck idiot. He's an oaf. He's full of himself. He's very physically powerful, but he's so blind to the truth and just sees what he wants to see. It makes him incredibly dumb. It's almost like a massive jock who just doesn't give a damn and just does what he wants. And he's got a gun too. So it's kind of scary.
And he's got a gun, absolutely. So it reminds me from our high school days of a big guy that's a dummy that did whatever he wanted. Reminds me a bit of two people, Bart and what was the one that McCarty was so in love with? He was a year under us.
Ethan?
Yes.
Ethan. Yeah,
both of them. They just did whatever they wanted. They're both kind of big and dumb and drove me insane.
I cannot wait if they ever do stumble across this podcast and we're like, yeah, remember that idiot? Gaston.
You'll be listening to it with their children, and we're going to bring them up and talk about how terrible they are.
They've completely changed. They give it to charities. They're sitting in their study room.
They're thin and skinny and...
They have little Monica Weeks. Probably liberal. No.
Weak-minded buffoons.
So before we get into the matchups, because we're gonna just randomize, Scott and I have been doing this thing where we flip a coin to see who takes who on each side. As in, Gaston versus Clayton will flip a coin and see who gets to defend who. And before we get into that, though, I want to ask you, Scott, how's your week going? How have you been?
It's been good. Thank you for asking. This week has been nice. Trying to think I think the high point right now is that for the last 6 weeks, my wife and I have been on a special intermittent fasting.
Ooh.
Like a new health tryout kind of thing.
How's that working out?
It's been going really well. I've actually really enjoyed it because honestly, based off of what healthy eating is compared to this particular program that we're following to what I was doing before, I just flat out wasn't eating enough, and yet somehow I still gained weight.
Interesting.
I'm eating so much more food right now, and I've lost weight, and it's all because of the intermittent fasting with on top of the carb cycling thing. So nice. Tomorrow is our last day. So we're fine. We've been really strict for 6 weeks. So we're super glad to be we're going to continue with it, but not so strict. Because tomorrow I'm baking some cookies.
Oh yeah. What kind?
Chocolate chip, mother. I'm not gonna say that.
Shut your mouth.
Went straight into it.
Shut your
chocolate chip, you big idiot.
I'm only talking about chocolate chip. Well, what were the hours you all established for when you can't and cannot eat?
You kind of got free range with that. It just had to be a 16-hour period where you weren't eating and then an 8-hour period where you were.
Okay.
So it's kind of like we basically did 12 to 8 we would eat.
That's what I did.
Because that's like, it worked out well. Like, I like eating like in the morning. It's part of my favorite. It's like my favorite part of the day, wake up and eat. But like, it's just on that cusp of like, you know what? I can make it to noon and I have until 8, because once I start trying to like be with my daughter, put her down for bed and stuff, it's like I don't even normally get dinner like started till 7. So I'm like, I have to make it. I have to give myself till 8 o'clock.
There you go. Word, dude.
But it's been good.
I'm glad
nice.
The IF life is treating you well.
Yes, it's been all right. The only other thing interesting that happened is I went out yesterday and I bought myself a shovel. Spent like $15 on this shovel.
It's happening.
It had a 15-year warranty, and I put it in the soil and I dug it up and it snapped right away.
Pull that receipt and get back to Home Depot.
Oh yeah, I already got it returned, and I was just kind of like, it snapped, and I walked up to the door, like at the glass door at our house, and I just knocked on it, and Lauren came to the door, and her jaw just kind of dropped. She's like, "What did you do?" I was like, "Nothing." I swear.
I just wanted to hide the body in the shovel.
Yes. But what about you, my dear friends? What was your week been like?
Oh man, it's all starting to blur together with this quarantine. To be fair, again, I've said this before in the past. My lifestyle has been pretty. I'm like a hermit to begin with, but I guess like not being able to go to like the stores. I mean, I can go to the stores, but like it's socially irresponsible to go to like Best Buy or go to the mall, which was
Best Buy open?
It was early on in the quarantine. It might still be. We're in a neck of the woods. I live near the Appalachian Trail of Virginia. So you can see that I am actually a well-educated person of the Southeast, because I call it the Appalachian Trail, not the Appalachian Trail. Pshaw. I recall in college back in like 2011, because I went to a school called the University of North Georgia. And there was a festival called Bear on the Square, which was a celebration of Appalachian bluegrass music, and I loved it. Well, part of my class was volunteering to help get the festival set up. And I remember my teacher, who was a cool guy, he was like, just remember, it's not Appalachian, it's Appalachian, like almost throwing an apple at you. So Appalachian is how you say it. I'm like, oh, cool. There's probably some guy who listens to bluegrass who's like, he's wrong. He's wrong.
You tell that teacher of yours he's a son of a bitch.
Actually, I think my teacher, I walked in one time, I think he was doing cocaine. Because
wow.
I walked into his office because his name was Professor Chuck. Really cool guy. I hope I'm not.
I'm sure he was. Sounds super cool.
I do cocaine. It's awesome. No, I hope I'm not criminalizing it right now. By the way, this is all alleged. I walked into his office to talk to him. It was like during like exam week, and I was asking him a question. And he had his face just straight up on his desk. And I walked in, I'm like, Professor Chuck. He throws his head back and his eyes were bloodshot red. He's like, hey. So it could be that he was sleeping. That's probably what it was, most likely. But for some reason, I was like, why? I'm like, what were you doing? Like, what's going on? But yeah.
Did he have a straw or like a rolled up dollar bill next to him by chance?
Yeah, got a razor blade to cut it up into lines.
Nice.
I can't recall. And the thing is, I think one of my biggest, like, okay, this is going to sound like now existential. One of my biggest fears is when memories start to become like dreams, where you're not sure if you're recalling 100% or not. Because there are some things where I'm like, did that happen that way? Or did I just, or is my memory starting to become diluted with dreams where I'm making stuff up and I don't know it? That's scary to me. So
sure.
But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the older you are, the more memories throughout your existence. So it makes sense that you won't remember everything. But I also like that if you watch like a home video or if you smell a certain smell, it's almost like your memory is like revving the engine going, oh, there it is. Like, I remember now, especially with smell. Like you smell like, I don't know, something that kind of reminds me of a particular Christmas morning. And you're like, Oh my god, I got a PS2 that one morning for Christmas, and
That's what you smelled?
the PS2. I smelled a PS2. It was
Fresh
still
off the press.
fresh from the factory. But no, I guess again, by the way, folks, to let you all know, this is a podcast where we encourage random tangents, having fun. The entire premise is just good chemistry with you all and with ourselves and our conversation. So going off the beaten path is something that we want to embrace. But that being said,
cocaine and PS2.
Cocaine's in PS2. Cocaine's.
Not just one, but multiples.
Multiple cocaines.
I'm snorting cocaines.
But to bring it back to your question, I am doing well. I continue forward. I broke 1 million subscribers this past week.
I saw that. Congratulations to you, sir. Now I can delete all those fake accounts I created for
you. Don't tell the administration. But no, that was cool. That was a moment of like, sweet.
That's amazing.
I felt very. It was surreal, and I'm blessed. So I was.
Did you celebrate in any particular way?
Not really, because we get in quarantine, and I can't really hang out with folks. So I made a pizza casserole in my cast iron grill, and I also made a steak, so I had that for dinner. I'm like, I'm celebrating. I'm so sad. It's like,
well, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like a meal our dear friend Gaston would eat.
Gaston would pound down 5 pizza casseroles and have room for 2 more dozen eggs.
That, and he wouldn't just eat a steak. He would eat the whole cow.
Yeah, the entire thing with LeFou watching. LeFou has to watch and be naked in the corner of the room.
Oh, absolutely. But like he has to watch, he has to face the corner, so he watches with a special mirror, the mirror that the Beast gave Belle, in fact.
I told you, LeFou, don't look at me when I'm eating my steak.
Never look directly at me.
Sorry, Gaston. All right, so we got 15 matchups right now listed. Do you want to go the path of the randomization with the quarter?
Yeah, but we have 15 possibilities and only 2 sides to a quarter.
We will flip it with every single round. With every round, we'll flip a coin.
Oh, okay, so the coin's the coin's just gonna decide what side you or I are taking. But we're gonna. Okay, I'm with you. I was a step behind.
No, you're good. You're good. I
was still at LeFou in the corner.
LeFou is still naked in the corner.
That's where I was.
Some Silence of the Lambs, like craziness. All right, so our first matchup is one that we started off with thinking this would be the main matchup for the entire podcast, but then we started to elaborate on other ones, but this is the core one. Gaston versus Clayton from Tarzan. Now, for those who don't recall, Clayton was the villain in Tarzan. He wanted to kill the gorillas. He was a burly British poacher. I am Clayton, and I talk like this, and I have a rifle, Jane, and my hair's slicked back. I'm a gentleman, but I also kill gorillas. That's Clayton. And
yes. He's a good Clayton, too.
Oh, thank you. I've been working on Clayton. For real? You think so?
Yeah, especially when you said gorillas and Jane. Those 2 words specifically, you like sank into it just so nicely.
He's got that drawl, Jane, and then gorillas.
Yeah, and emphasis on that O. Every time I think of Clayton, I can't not hear him yell the word gorillas. That's gorillas!
Which Tarzan's like, gorillas! Right back at him. I remember that, yeah.
I actually love that movie so much.
Who would have thought that Phil Collins doing the entire soundtrack would work so well?
Seriously. I mean, did he? I think he did score the whole thing. I mean, they had some of the singers on there. He
did all of it. Now, as far as like the composition, as far as like the instrumental background stuff, I don't think that was him. But as far as the lyrical songs, like "Son of Man," "You'll Be in My Heart," "I Want to Know," and stuff like that. Those were all Phil Collins, because that was, I think, the first time Disney's ever actually said, "Hey, let's bring in an artist to do this, all the individual songs."
Yeah, well, he killed him. I mean, did he do the Shooba-Doop one?
No,
Girls in the Camp, because he didn't sing that one. Dude, I know that
he did it, and he did it along with the Backstreet Boys.
NSYNC, sir.
Was it NSYNC?
It was NSYNC.
I stand corrected. It was one of those 2 boy bands from our era of the boy band battles.
Yes, it was NSYNC, their greatest nemesis. There's another verses for you.
There, yeah, actually, we should write that one down. NSYNC versus Backstreet Boys.
I'll type it up. I'll type it up right now.
So so Phil Collins doing all the songs. By the way, I know that oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name. Crocodile Rock. Elton John did the music, some of the songs for The Lion King, and that he did. Oh gosh, it escapes me.
You trying to think of the song?
It's the one with Nala and Simba running around.
Yeah, it's a love song.
Can you feel the love tonight? No. Can you feel the love tonight?
He does. I know he did that one. I didn't know if he did any more than that one.
I think he might have done a few more, and because he recently won an Oscar for his music in Rocket Man, and I believe he also won an Oscar for The Lion King back in the day. Elton John's wonderful. I love him, but it was interesting to see like how here's a quick little fun fact story, and then we'll move along with our verses. So Elton John did, of course, the song for Can You Feel Love Tonight, and he said, I want this to be a serious moment in the movie. I want it to be Simba and Nala singing back and forth to each other. Well, the folks who did the animation for the movie, the staff, they were playing with the idea of what if Timon and Pumbaa did the entire song, which they in the original final print, they have them starting up the song, to which then it carries over to Simba and Nala singing it. Well, there was a version where it had Pumbaa and Timon singing it, and Elton John again advised against it. He invited there to be a premiere showing of the test footage they had so far at Elton John's private theater. I believe it was somewhere near Atlanta. Well, it got to that part, and the staff were watching the audience's reaction to Timon and Pumbaa doing the entire thing. And the audience is like, oh no, this is kind of weird to have this romantic heavy moment of Simba kind of re-establishing his love, because he's a kind of a lazy, Lebowski guy at this point. Now he's starting to realize, oh, I love Nala. I have feelings for her. These are emotions that are new to me. It's supposed to be emotional and kind of also nostalgic. Well, to have Timon and Pumbaa sing the entire thing is like insulting. Well, the staff noticed like, people aren't really digging this. They looked to the back of the theater. Elton John was standing there. And they weren't expecting him to be there.
Oh gosh!
Accordingly, or allegedly, to what I read, Elton John laid into them afterwards, saying, "Why the hell did you even ask me to do the music if you're not going to listen to me? What am I doing here? Why am I here? Like, what do you not trust me? Like, do you want to do this right or not?" And they had their tails between their legs, went back to Florida or California, wherever it was. And they got back to work, and they did exactly what Elton just said, which then led to an Oscar-winning performance.
Of course.
So it's like, listen to the guy who is like a legend of music. It's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I'd say so. That's definitely a good thing to do.
All right, coin flip. Gaston versus Clayton. Whoever gets heads gets Gaston. All right, call it.
Yep.
All right, call it. Which one?
Heads.
Oh, I dropped it.
Back.
All right, it's on tails. So that means I get Gaston and you get Clayton, right? All right? Correct. Bring it. All right, who wants the opening argument here?
Bring it. You usually allow me to open up my argument first. I would like to permit that to you, good sir.
Thank you. I acknowledge your polite debate ethical
ethnicity. I admire your debate ethnicity, sir.
I tried to sound fancy and completely botched it. Whatever. So, all right, I'm Gaston. Gaston is a man of the ages, a man who is known throughout Belle's Village as being the epitome of masculinity. This is a man who has physical strength that is insurmountable. He has the accuracy of a Navy SEAL, a Navy SEAL sniper. Gaston can down 13 dozens of eggs. My fellow people of the court, I want you all to realize that Gaston he rises above the average human tenfold. And despite I will acknowledge his lack of technology. This is a man who will occasionally even downgrade to a bow and arrow just to make it a fair fight. He didn't go to fight the beast with a gun that he obviously had. He went to go fight the beast with a bow and arrow and his own 2 mitts. that's a man who is incredibly powerful and knows it. And I think someone like Clayton, who might be strong, doesn't even come close to the physical power of Gaston.
Hmm. Okay, I hear your argument. Do you have more to add?
No, I defer to you now.
Okay, sir. Why Clayton would win? Well, we don't know a lot about Clayton outside of his ability to hunt, which he's also a very good hunter, poacher, if you will, because he does do it illegally. So that certainly does lend us to the idea that he is gonna be fairly dirty. He's a bad guy, so no surprise. He does have a technological advantage here. This is, I believe, set in the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s.
I think it was around the 1800s.
Yeah, it's definitely on the late side. Certainly, they had big, giant steam cargo ships. The weaponry he chose, while it was a double-barreled shotgun, definitely like turn of the century style kind of equipment.
It says 1890s is when they kind of guess
1890s. That sounds right. I'll take it. So he's in the 1890s. He got some pretty solid equipment, much better equipment than Gaston would have. So in a face-to-face, we're talking two big guys, all kinds of hairy, but with definitely an equipment advantage on Clayton's side. He is a tactician by far. He sets traps. He lures people and gorillas into these traps. He's also extremely. He's very smart. He has that advantage on Gaston for sure because he was a wise one. He had everybody believing the real reason was just study and track, and he had no clue and no problem convincing everybody of what he needed them to believe. He convinced Tarzan that he was a good guy. Granted, Tarzan he was one of the first guys he ever saw. He had Jane and the professor and the captain of the ship convinced that he was a good fellow, just trying to help out and find gorillas. So, I mean, Gaston certainly would have strength over him because all we can take into reality is what they give us in cartoons, because that would be canon. Gaston is roughly the size of a barge, so I can't say that Clayton is going to beat him like in fisticuffs. However, being both hunters, set them into a jungle or forests setting, I think Clayton would take him. I think through just intelligence, traps, weaponry, I think he's got him. I really think it's it. I think that would end it.
You know what? I'll admit when I'm defeated. I give it a. So for those in the audience who don't know, what we will do to make it to kind of entertain the ratio of win and loss. I do acknowledge that Clayton is more intelligent. He's more sophisticated, more tactical. Gaston's pride leads him into pitfalls where he's almost too headstrong. I think where Clayton would be on the ropes is if it became a melee fight. Clayton has a machete.
Absolutely.
I think Gaston physically could grab Clayton's arm and wrist and break it. And
he could rip it off, probably.
Yeah, I think if it came down to a melee combat, Gaston's going to take it. But if it's a fight where Clayton can use his traps, and not even that, but also have his weapons, I looked about Beauty and the Beast took place in 1740. That's a massive technological difference. If Clayton's got his gun, it's over. He's also a hunter. And he's a good shot, too. He shot Kerchak the gorilla pretty easily.
Yeah,
so,
he pretty much laid waste to a massive gorilla with one shot.
Yeah, Scott, I defer to you. You win this round. I believe that Clayton would win. That being said, though, I want to offer but an additional versus to see what you think.
Okay.
In the same vein of Tarzan versus Beauty and the Beast, the movie, who would win a fight? The Beast versus Kerchak the gorilla.
Ooh. You know what? I'm not gonna lie. This would almost, in my mind, this almost falls back to episode 1. Bear versus gorilla, sir.
Oh my God, you're right.
Like, it's a gorilla. but it's also what's beast, but not kind of bear-like. I mean, if you look at the cartoon, he looks kind of like a bear mixed with a lion.
He's a smarter bear.
Yeah, he's a human intelligence bear, which
But
is
to be
smarter
fair,
than a gorilla.
Kerchak is also much more intelligent as well as a gorilla. So
He is.
yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I honestly I could end this right now, and I'm like I would put my money on Beast. That's where I would lean. I think he's got the same strength, but a higher level of intelligence. He's got claws and fangs that will rip and tear. I'm like I think Beast has got it.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna. This is gonna be so ironic. I think Kerchak would take it. What the hell's going on?
What?
What's going on? What's going on?
Oh my gosh.
Kerchak is like massive compared to an actual gorilla. Like he's almost like in between normal gorilla and like King Kong gorilla or Mighty Joe Young or something. I think
Yeah, let's go Mighty Joe Young.
I think Kerchak, if he got his hands on Beast, he could break bone. Now I do give Beast props for being more intelligent, having sharp tools with his claws, but something tells me that a bear is more powerful than. Yeah, that's tough. Because also Beast is like 10 feet tall.
Beast is huge.
Should we come back to this in a future episode?
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back.
I think
that's a solid. That'll be a good one.
I'm kind of like this. This isn't on purpose, folks. Like legitimately, we are on the same. For those who don't know, Scott defended gorillas. I defended bears last time, and now both of us are on the opposite end of the matchup with Kerchak versus Beast. So that's really interesting. All right. Our second matchup, we've got Gaston versus Shrek. All right, Scott, call it.
Heads.
Heads will be for Clayton. Tails is for Shrek. All right, you got. I'm sorry for
Gaston.
Gaston. So you got Gaston. I got Shrek.
Boom. Okay. Ooh, this will be good. So, I mean, the arguments are almost set into place for Gaston at this point. So I guess my best argument would be to talk about why Shrek would lose versus why Gaston would win. Because I got to give you credit. You had some thorough arguments on Gaston's corner
and use
versus
them.
Clayton.
Use them.
Absolutely. I will. So I'll lead this one off if you will so yield.
I will yield it to you.
As we know, reviewing the facts, Gaston, the peak of masculinity. He is a sharpshooter. He is a fan favorite. The people love him. He is dumb, but he is headstrong, insanely strong. And I mean, golly, it comes down to him. Like, you look at Shrek, he is a big monster, certainly. But Gaston, seeing especially as how he hates monsters, he'll basically flip his switch into like rage mode. I mean, he was absolutely berserker rage when he was fighting Beast in the movie. You know, like his strength in fight or flight mode would even double. So he would not become roughly the size of a barge, but against Shrek, he would be like 2 barges.
That's tough. Now, to be fair, though, Gaston still lost to Beast.
He did. You're right. He did. You're absolutely right.
And he begged for his life and was groveling to be not killed. So let us acknowledge that despite Gaston's big talk, when his chips are on the table, he'll be crying for his life.
Correct. But what did he do after he was shown mercy? He grabbed his knife and he went after me to his downfall because he tripped and fell and died.
Which could happen to any of us. So
absolutely. So the thing is, he did lose the fight in that he died, but Beast did not actually kill him.
That's fair. It's gravity.
Gravity. Yeah, that's gonna come up. But yeah, so yeah, there's my argument for Gaston. He has a berserker rage mode that I think only really gets tapped into when he's faced with a monster that he despises. He would definitely despise Shrek. I think we would not have even seen his strength had he and Clayton come into a melee fight because he's fighting another human. Honestly, Clayton and Gaston probably would have gotten along. But Gaston and Shrek, ne'er would they be friends.
No, absolutely not. You're right. I think Clayton and Gaston would be like best buddies. So, do I have the court?
Yes, please.
All right, so Shrek is, in my opinion, physically stronger. There were moments in Shrek movies where he's fighting off like 10 knights at a time, and he's tossing them like pillows. I
True.
think Shrek is also, he keeps a calm, chilled disposition as far as like keeping a cool head in battle. It's rare to see him lose it. He has, but not to the point where it's like it's more of an exception versus like the norm. I think Shrek, if in this case, I will fully acknowledge that Gaston has more ranged weapons, and if he can land a couple of good shots on Shrek, it will do some severe damage, which would allow Gaston to possibly finish the job. That being said, if he missed, if Shrek can close the distance and get his hands on Gaston, it's over. Shrek is physically, in my opinion, much more strong, or he's stronger than Gaston. I think it'd be a couple of minutes of like, Gaston's holding his own for a moment, but then Shrek just goes, he turns on that ogre strength, which is like more than a human, and would break his arms, and it's over.
Okay. Yeah, he is. But remember, we got to remember, Gaston, while we didn't see a lot of his feats of strength, he did lift a bench of 3 women over his head with ease. That's 3 grown women.
But Shrek,
I'm just saying, he was throwing grown men around like pillows, but he did not necessarily lift 3 or 4 of them up at once over his head.
So that bench is probably like what, 50 pounds plus each woman's like below 100. So that's like 400 pounds or so, give or take.
I mean, it's based on the voluptuousness of those cartoon women, it's arguable that they might be at least 100 pounds.
And he said in his own words, "And as you can see, I have biceps to spare." Dun dun. Boom. So he's strong. I give him that. But Shrek, I mean, his physical strength, he cut a chain link, thick metal chain with a sword. No, he didn't. He did not. He did not. He did not do that. I'm sorry. I take that back. But I still think Shrek, who has gotten it, because at the end of Shrek 1, he got into a fight with like all these knights surged into the wedding room or whatever. And he was tossing them around like throw pillows. They were nothing to him. And he also fought them in that one Coliseum battle, and he was like WWE wrestling these guys and just knocking them out left and right. Like the only time they actually had the upper hand was when a bunch of crossbows were pulled out, which it's game over unless Shrek has got like tough skin. So
right,
according to movie Shrek power scales, I think Shrek, if Gaston's, if he's got his blunderbuss or his bow and arrow, that's going to cause a problem. Blunderbuss, much more so. A bow and arrow would cripple Shrek. But if Shrek can close the distance and get his hands on Gaston, I think there'd be a bit of a struggle, but would eventually allow Shrek to win. Because Shrek is an ogre. He's powerful. He's got more strength. I mean, he's like picking up a donkey in his arm like it's nothing. So I think Shrek's got more strength than Gaston. Enough to, again, like they lock fist and they're struggling. They're holding their arms, kind of pushing back and forth to each other. But then Gaston's like, oh, this is an ogre. I'm going to lose. The same way he lost to Beast.
There it is. I was waiting to see if you were going to say it. I think I will yield to you, good sir. I think you actually have this one right. I think this is a potential exact kind of matchup that Gaston would have had with Beast, and where Gaston came at him with a knife, with a bow and arrow, and still managed to have to get into a close one-on-one contact fight, and he actually did succumb to Beast. So I think Shrek may actually take this one because he's dumb enough. Gaston seems to be dumb enough to not take his gun.
Here's my question to you. In a fight, so blank out of 10 many times, if there was a battle where Gaston has his gun versus Shrek, and tell me what you think. I think 9 out of 10 times Gaston would win that fight
with his gun,
because he's a good shot.
Absolutely, yeah. In reality, a blunderbuss you can really only fire once before you have to completely reload the thing. But Gaston's blunderbuss is able to fire at least 3 shots in a row,
which is like that's Gaston levels of technology right there. Like, it's
Yeah,
insane.
so
He willed it into
given his
existence.
gun, done.
He
But the moron would likely not take his gun, just like he did for Beast.
so in a match where it's Gaston with his bow and arrow versus Shrek, I think 5 out of 10 times he would defeat Shrek, because if he lands a crippling shot, it would be enough to drain Shrek's strength to where it could be more on equal footing. If he misses his shot, if Gaston cannot use any of his weapons to land a hit on Shrek, I think
Yeah.
Shrek would win it 9 out of 10 times in a physical battle of in melee combat.
Yeah, and truthfully, though we don't see it exactly in Shrek, lore of ogres is that they will eat people.
Yes.
So Shrek could just be like, you know what? I fancy a snack, and just get him in close and bite his face real hard.
Bite his head right off. Word. Yep. All right. Round 3 is one that's a bit topical. It is Gaston versus COVID-19. Call it heads for Gaston, tails for COVID. Ready?
All right, I'm going tails.
All right, you got it. So I'm Gaston, you're COVID. All right.
Okay.
I will launch things off. Gaston,
please do.
Came from the 1740s, an era that is it's only owed to common knowledge of the plagues that have come before and still lurk in the dark corners of the world's history. France is no stranger to the bubonic plague. It's no stranger to many a plague, and I'd imagine that that Gaston knows what a plague is, and he's like, "What's that? You've got the plague? Stay away from me!" Like that's what I imagine. Like Gaston is at least hopefully smart enough to realize that the plague is deadly and to stay away from it. Yes, he cannot read, but I think he would at least know when a plague is near and to stay away from it.
Okay, have you finished, sir?
Give me a counterpoint. Why do you think he would fall to COVID?
Okay, I believe that given to women, he would not practice social distancing.
Oh shoot! I think he just won.
Ultimately, I think it's really just the fact that Gaston comes from this, what was it we said, the 1740s?
Correct-ish.
The 1740s world would succumb to a cold. Like, you died from the common cold in the 1740s. The life expectancy of that time frame was very low. You died of very common ailments now. I think since we couldn't necessarily bring a guy from the 1740s here because he only exists in the 1740s cartoon world, if COVID-19 did go into that world, I think we would see him get taken down. Yeah. I think he would find himself with somebody who is a carrier with no ailments to be seen, and he would catch it and he'd be done for, because like I said, he would not practice social distancing. He's got to have them ladies, and he's probably going to hookers.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to deny that. I know what I'm beating. I think COVID-19. It's not terrifying enough initially to really scare him. If there was bubonic level of death, I think he'd be like, "Oh, I'm staying at home, LeFou. I'll eat my eggs in secrecy." Versus, he's like, secret eggs, baby. Where's my shipment of eggs? Versus COVID-19, where he's like, "It's not real. I'm going down to the bar to get with those 3 triplets." That's
exactly right.
And one of those triplets, one of those triplets probably have it, and they're like, don't know it. Give it to Gaston, and Gaston would catch COVID. Yeah. COVID would at least. I would, if someone said, "Oh, Gaston has COVID," I'd be like, "Oh, it's not surprising." So you know what? Yeah, I lose. I defer to you.
Man, Gaston is not coming across well right now.
Gaston's getting cleaned out. In the last 3 rounds, Gaston has lost to Clayton, Shrek, and COVID. Now, to be fair, He would. It's actually not that fair because I think we both said that in a battle, it depends on the circumstances. So let me clear that off. So to COVID-19, Gaston would lose. There's a clear cut
Yes.
battle. Versus Shrek, we mentioned before, it's a physical battle. Shrek would win. If it's range, Gaston's got it. Clayton would beat Gaston unless it's a physical battle, which Gaston has it. So
Yes.
moving on to round 4, and this is a actual. I feel canonically speaking, there is truth to what we're about to say for this matchup.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 4th matchup for Gaston versus the world is Gaston versus high cholesterol.
Yes.
Because as we know, when he was a lad, he ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to help him get large. But now that I'm grown, I eat 5 dozen eggs, so I'm roughly the size of a barge. So,
Oh my gosh.
heads for Gaston, tails for high cholesterol. Call it, Scott.
Tails.
All right, I got Gaston. You got high cholesterol.
Just concede. You lose.
But no, Gaston is a Gaston is a fictional character. He does not obey to the laws of this earthly realm and its limitations. Gaston sees an egg and he sees potential. He sees the protein. He sees the cholesterol and says, "This is my fiery furnace. I am going to use this egg. Nay, I will use 5 dozen eggs to help me feel the fire of my passion and my hunting and my physical prowess." I think I said that wrong. But I think Clayton sees an egg and he laughs, knowing that not Clayton. Gaston sees an egg and he laughs, knowing that it is just a source of fuel. It means nothing to him. High cholesterol, that's for old men. Gaston is in his prime. High cholesterol is seen as it's a minor complaint, if anything.
Okay. I appreciate those arguments. I think taking him out of the natural world, which is fair, honestly would potentially change even the last outcome of Gaston versus COVID-19. So it just depends on the setting. If we are taking high cholesterol into a cartoon land, I think Gaston would probably be able to avoid it because they live, as far as we know, in a land of no disease.
Yeah, but to say
Right?
when we're doing the Bonjour song at the start, that village seems pretty chilled out. I don't see any like diseased people on the streets like hanging around.
No homeless that I could see.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of bonjour, 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 bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour.
I mean, Gaston's probably too busy floating in the air to care.
Yes. But the thing is, though, like you have to remember, it's just like with our argument of Gaston versus COVID-19. Like high cholesterol, just to have the argument is to accept that high cholesterol exists and that he eats 60 eggs
That's a lot.
at once.
That's a lot.
Like that's a lot. So I'm like, it's to have the argument, you have to put them within the realm of each other. So if they are in the same realm, it is impossible that Gaston would not have high cholesterol eating that much of just eggs and steak. He looks like a man who doesn't know what a vegetable is and couldn't spell the word anyway.
You know what? I feel like if he ate a vegetable, it would be seen as a weakness.
Yeah, I don't think he would eat one. It's rabbit food.
It's rabbit food. I agree. So if we're obeying the laws of the physical realm that we exist in of reality, I think high cholesterol would have an advantage that would, of course, grow in time. In the realm of Beauty and the Beast, I see it more of like these 5 dozen eggs. How do you think he eats his eggs, by the way, Scott?
Honestly, I'm pretty sure they show in the movie he just drops them down as the shell too.
Oh my god, that's right. He downs it all like straight up like raw. He's gonna get salmonella. Gaston versus salmonella. Bonus round. Who'd win?
I think salmonella would take him because he's got to have it. Again, the only way to have these verses is if these things were in the same playing field. So if Gaston is in the same playing field as Salmonella and he's eating a bunch of raw eggs with the shells, which I'm like,
Ew.
rip up your butthole much. Like,
I know.
he will definitely have it. He'll have high cholesterol, COVID-19, and Salmonella.
While Shrek slaps him. I think, yeah, if we're asking this in the realm of reality, I think high cholesterol would take it eventually.
Yes.
Unless
However, I will say he may not necessarily die of high cholesterol. He would just definitely have it.
he'd have high cholesterol. He would have it, and which would probably lead
Yes.
to a heart attack eventually. And then
Eventually.
salmonella almost seems like it's like a foregone conclusion where it's like he will eventually get salmonella. He probably eats chicken raw. So yeah. I don't think Gaston's very bright. He's pretty stupid. I think his pride and his ego is his downfall, as we saw in Beauty and the Beast, where again he did not even bring his gun to a fight. It's like, dude, come on. So
Yeah, that's like your best thing, and you left it at home.
all right, round 5, and this one seems like it's going to be quite handedly taken. We have Gaston versus the 4th grade. So
Yes. Not 4th grade students by any means.
no, they'd lose.
Against the 4th grade.
The 4th grade education system. All right, 4th grade education system is tails. Gaston's heads. Call it.
Heads.
All right, get Gaston. I got the 4th grade.
Okay. Oh
Go on.
gosh.
All right,
I just wanted to go opposite of tails, but goodness, I
burden-
didn't really want Gaston.
the burden's on you to provide for.
Oh, golly.
The question is, how smart is Gaston? Go ahead.
Well, how smart is Gaston? So far, we've seen a lot of evidence that he is not. But he is smart enough to have grown up to become a full man and potentially not learn to read at all. That takes an intelligence to be able to get through life and be a success in the village and not have such a fundamental skill. So there must be some level of innate natural intelligence that probably just doesn't stick around once he's mad about stuff.
Okay. So he's got street smarts, is what you're saying.
I think he's got a fair amount of street smarts. And honestly, I know from the secondary adaptation of Beauty and the Beast that was just a couple years ago, the live action. We know that LeFou, he says that he is illiterate.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he says it in the movie.
Oh, I don't even remember that. Damn. Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, but Gaston, do we remember if Gaston was actually illiterate? Does it ever say that? Or is that just a pretty safe assumption?
An assumption in the sense of when he picks up Belle's book, he's like, there are no pictures, which I think that's a way of saying that he does not care for words. And also in the song, when he's playing a game of chess, he just smacks the board out of the way. He lost, but he's like, I think here's the thing about Gaston, and it follows a very old school approach to conquering when it comes to history. Might makes right, as in it doesn't matter if you ethically are on the right side of history. It doesn't matter as long as you have overwhelming power, which Gaston does.
Yes, correct. Okay, so we can safely assume that if he can read, it's probably below a 4th grade level, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean he can't. So, given a good teacher and any level of patience, I think Gaston could do fine in the 4th grade. He's got some level of intelligence. I think with the right voluptuous teacher, he might pay attention long enough to accomplish some level of 4th grade education.
I can see that. Now, I disagree. I now present my argument. I think Gaston is full of himself. He's got a massive ego. He's got blinders on. He only sees what he wants to see. He sees education as a waste of his time. If he's not spending his time pounding eggs and pounding women, then I don't see
I don't even know if I want that to mean sexually. Like either way, that's a horrible picture.
Oh yeah, he's got issues. But I do think Gaston sees education as a waste of time. Now mind you, Scott, education back in the 1740s was a privilege. It was meant for folks who can rise above the means of their existence or are rich enough to afford an education.
Correct.
Gaston
It's
is
actually very unlikely in that time frame that Belle would know how to read at all,
Belle's the
which is
exception.
probably why they think she's so. That is why I think she's so weird.
Yes, she's a well-educated woman who's more than just, a breeding ground. And
Right.
I know it sounds dementing. Dementing is the right word? Or demeaning.
Diminutive?
Demeaning.
Demeaning. There you go.
But that's the truth, though. That's why the town sees Belle as odd. It's like she's a woman who's beautiful, but she has a mind and she reads. What the hell is that about?
Yeah.
Versus, but mind you, again, Belle is an exception. She's a daughter of a brilliant inventor who is inventing a steam engine like wood chopper. So that's props to Belle for being her to rise above the means of her upbringing, and I'm sorry, not her upbringing, but her socioeconomic position in life.
Okay.
Gaston is, I mean, he comes from a line of societal norms where he is a strong man, a hunter, big muscles. I'm charismatic and I'm strong. I will go out and shoot elk and bring them home and flex my biceps and lift these 3 triplets above my head. Like Gaston is, again, might makes right. And I believe that he takes that mantra to heart, that mantra, whatever, that's his philosophy in life. And that to spend, and also, mind you, despite the technological achievements of mankind, he still is the kind of guy where he like flexes in the mirror. I'm a strong guy. Yeah, I'm powerful. I can just my physical ability makes weaker men shake in their boots. Though, let's be real here, when it comes to humanity and physical strength, it's like if a bodybuilder is charging me and I got a pistol, I just pop him in the head and it's over. Like, you can be physically strong, but technology, intelligence, at the end of the day, in a fight, will usually win, unless there's a major exception. So, I highlight that Gaston's ego is his downfall, and that his ego would prevent him from conquering the 4th grade. He'd go to it and say, "Why am I here?" and then just leave. That especially if he's in a classroom with kids, that would rub his pride so hard. He'd be like, "I'm above this," and then leave.
Perhaps, but I don't know. Like, I guess the proof is just really in the pudding, which is the reality is that he stares at a book, turns it upside down, and says, "There's no pictures." So I think I may have to concede to the 4th grade, but I'm like, I feel like I can't tell for sure, but I feel like Gaston is not necessarily low born. Like,
oh no, I don't think so. I think he comes from
okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think he comes from a wealthy background.
Okay, so here's where my argument lies. It's pretty common that those who have the wealth, you said it yourself, the parents would force their kids to go to school. Now, again, I guess it's possible that he just wouldn't pay attention, but like, he still grew up potentially with money as a hybrid child and would have had to learn letters and numbers to a degree. So, and again, he is a grown man, so he would have had to go through the entire range of 1740s childhood to early adulthood education until he decided to just become a hunter and not care about that stuff anymore. So how much do you think he really doesn't know versus just how much do you just think he doesn't care?
That is a good point. Knowing versus caring. I still stand but that, like, okay, if Clayton has an education, I guarantee that Clayton's ego still had him knowing that might makes right, but he's also smart enough to know that you need to learn how to shoot a gun, how to do certain things, because intelligence is important, but combining it with strength makes you unstoppable. Versus Gaston, who's like, "I'm overwhelmingly strong, I don't need this, I'll just be the best hunter ever." And that reading and mystery solving and using like deductive reasoning is something that Gaston doesn't really get. I mean, again, this is a guy who ran up to a castle full of furniture that came alive, and then he didn't really blink twice to it. He just kind of ran up the stairs with his bow and arrow because he was so blinded by Beast, or to the notion of capturing Beast and killing him, that nothing else mattered. If a smart person went to a castle that was enchanted, they would immediately retreat because everything like strategically just went out the window. I would go, there could be a curse there. We just realized that magic's real. That's a big deal. I'd go, well, you know what I would do, Scott? I'd say, let's lay siege to the castle, get catapults, and burn it to the ground from a distance. That's what a practical person would do, because I wouldn't want to get anywhere near there. Now, of course, you would lose any kind of looting you would get from the castle, and also castle. But I'd be terrified of, like, this is a castle that's allegedly cursed. I don't want to step anywhere near there. I get cursed too. Gaston's too stupid to that. He's too dumb. He'd go, I'm gonna march in there because I'm strong. So I still think the 4th grade. I think the 2nd grade would lose. Maybe the 1st grade. But 4th grade is like you're starting to hit comprehensive. Like, let's learn grammar and basic math. And he's like, I have no time for this. So I think 4th grade would have Gaston. I think Arnold, who's in the 4th grade, or TJ from Recess, who's in the 4th grade, they're both much more intelligent and strategic than Gaston, who, again, is too sure of his physical strength, and that would lead to his downfall.
That does seem to pretty much be his MO. I don't know. It's hard to, I still can't completely give up the idea that Gaston would have had to have he would have passed the 4th grade education of the 1740s because he was a well-to-do man.
Scott. That's good.
What?
The education system of the 1740s, aka 0.5% of the population.
Correct. I think we'd have to get. I mean, if we're talking modern day 4th, like you said, 4th grade, I think you're starting to work your way into long division. I'm like, I don't think I can do long division now anyway, and I've been through the modern day 4th grade public school system.
Same, yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'll have to concede to the 4th grade. I think it would ultimately overwhelm him because I think, even because I'm going to say that this is Gaston as an adult, as we know him, having to go to a 4th grade class and be forced to learn.
I think that regard,
I think you're right in that, like you said, I think what you're about to say is that in that regard, as his adult self, he would not care nor take the time to learn anything that the 4th grade would have to teach him. He would just slap over all the other students, throw some desks, and march out.
Exactly. He'd be like, well, it's time for lunch, for eggs. So
yes, he would think he won, but ultimately he lost.
I agree. All right, word. So 4th grade wins this one. Well, Scott, those are our matchups. This was one heck of an episode. I love this. Well, we'll be back in the future with round 2 of Gaston versus the World.
Absolutely. Great job. Great conversation. Thank you, sir.
Likewise. Anything you want to say before we sign off?
Well, thank you guys for listening. Can't wait to hear from you. If you have other ideas for who Gaston should face in the world, please let us know. Please let us know. This has been so much fun to talk about.
Absolutely.
And honestly, like, if there's anything we said that you disagree with, let us know that too. Looking forward to hearing about agreements, disagreements. It's what this is about. Friendly debate, and just sharing experience. Really?
Yeah. We'll see what the future brings. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us for episode 3 of Gaston versus the World, aka BvG, and we will see you all next time.
See you around.